some roughly 10,000, I think it's down to around 7,000 now, Haitian refugees on our southern border who came into the United States from Mexico. In many cases, these are folks who have been living in Mexico or in other South and Central American countries. A lot of them went to Brazil from the first earthquake a couple of years ago and from the more recent earthquake that happened just a few months ago. And then, of course, there's the assassination of the president. The country's in turmoil. And the Biden administration has been using this law that was passed, it's called Title 42, which is a public health law, to deport these Haitians back to Haiti. And there have been a number of flights now already. Let's see if there's a number on the flights. I don't have at least 12 reparation flights so far that have deported more than 1,000 Haitians. And of course, we've all seen the video of the Border Patrol agents using their reins as whips against the Haitian migrants who are trying to come into the United States from Mexico. We have a policy with regard to refugees, but I think that this reflects a much larger problem. Back when Trump was all hysterical about the caravans are coming, those are people coming from Guatemala. Well, what happened in Guatemala? Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua, those countries, that little triangle or chunk of Central American countries just south of Mexico, that's where Ronnie Reagan was pouring tons of money. Illegally, by the way. Congress passed a law against it. You may not arm the Contras. And he did it anyway. And where did he get that money? He got it from selling American weapons illegally to Iran in exchange for Iran holding the hostages that they had taken until the election of 1980 so that Jimmy Carter would lose the election. This is the so-called Iran-Contra controversy or scandal or whatever. So we inserted ourselves into the politics of these four countries because two of them had governments that were semi-socialist. They were talking about, hey, let's give everybody Social Security. Let's have labor unions. They weren't going Cuba, right? They weren't going communist. This was socialism or democratic socialism, but that was enough to make Ronnie Reagan crazy. And so we disrupted their governments. We inserted ourselves in a big way over a period of several decades. And now we're suffering blowback. We supported the Duvalier family, 2 generations of them in Haiti. Back when James Monroe was president, and this is after, Washington and Adams and Jefferson and Madison, then came James Monroe, right? We're talking the 1820s, 1830s, I forget the year, but way back then, we got what was called the Monroe Doctrine, which basically said that the United States has a sphere of influence which includes the entire Western Hemisphere. Definitely includes the North American half and Central American half of the entire Western Hemisphere. And therefore, we are entitled to insert ourselves into the affairs of any of the countries in that area. And we followed that for over 100 years. And I would say the Monroe Doctrine is still being followed to some extent. So why don't we just embrace it? Right? Why don't we say, yeah, we have some responsibility for this hemisphere because we've been messing with it for over 200 years. And let's take some of that $5 trillion that we spent in Afghanistan and the $3.5 or $4 trillion so far that we've spent in Iraq and stop spending that money in these stupid ways that are just making our defense contractors rich overseas. And so far, it looks like we've stopped that with Afghanistan. Let's redirect some of those resources to helping these countries rebuild their civil societies and their governments in ways that, we may not agree with 100% of what they do. But we have actual crises going on. And frankly, in my opinion, we haven't intervened in Haiti, or actually we have intervened in Haiti in ways that were destructive. We haven't intervened in ways that are constructive, I believe, because Haiti is black. And we did intervene in Central America for reasons that were, more political than racial, although race is a piece of that as well. But let's just acknowledge, we have some obligations in the hemisphere. And by the way, when we don't meet those obligations, when we don't behave like good neighbors, when we don't participate in helping governments, lift themselves up by their bootstraps, what do we get? Refugees on our southern border, which Republicans then exploit as, oh my God, it's a crisis, and we've got to do something, and you bleeding heart liberals and all this kind of stuff. You want to stop the crisis on our southern border? Help put these countries back together. Let's rebuild Guatemala's government. Let's end the death squads down there and the gangs in Honduras. Let's help their governments do it in ways that are actually effective. Let's rebuild Haiti and help them put together some form of governance that works.